Okay, as is appropriate among the first videos, is the first revision, uh, bullet point type outline of the Holistic Human Health Fundamentals. So described because they are that critical. Starting with breathing. Incontrovertible, indisputable, uh, unfalsifiable, or not unfalsifiable in the sense that it isn't able to be tested. It is not going to be falsified. If anyone disputes that, and you can falsify the fact that breathing is required for basic health functionality, please reach out so that we can research such a specimen as yourself. Okay, optimizing each of the following and considering both qualitative and quantitative type factors, including but not limited to dose, frequency, variation, content, etc. Optimizing breathing, hydration includes, not just water, but the essential electrolytes. 3, essential nutrition, starting with the macros, i.e. protein and fat, i.e. more specifically, a whole food matrix preferably, but the essential amino acids, right, in their proper profiles, which our understanding is not perfect of, but EAAs, essential fatty acids, EFAs on the macros, on micros, essential vitamins, essential minerals, including trace minerals. 4, daily chronobiological or circadian control of light exposure, and that includes natural, artificial light, and I'm not going to detail any further than that. There will be in-depth content on each of these. 5, and somewhat related to 4, this is just like a catchphrase way of describing this principle, but that I've come up with is less screen time, more green time outdoors. And also grounding might be notable here. We need much more research on that. Regular hormetic, okay, and it might be perceived as a bit extra to qualify with hormetic, but arguably the point is minimum effective dose to facilitate the hormetic response from exercise. Exercise is a stress, it is a stressor. So there's different types of exercise, different modalities, there's different levels of stress, and depending on the context at hand, there'll be different levels of frequency, different levels of different type of exercise, different intensity level, different duration, volume, and whatnot. And exercise obviously has fundamental, just baseline physiological positive adaptative effects. There's also just more so mental effects, neuroprotective, BDNF stimulation, for example, but there's positive adaptative mental effects also. Just for your entire biosystem, exercise is arguably the real fountain of youth as compared to many other given factors. Even potentially something as fundamental as sleep, although they're both just essential, or sleep is obviously most essential, but that might help show the odd way in which we conceptualize this this concept of exercise, whereas historically the patterns of our activity levels were such that there was not this dedicated exercise sessions phenomenon. It was just something we consistently were doing, was what we would now in many contexts describe as akin to exercise. But regardless, you do need some level of physical activity to prevent deteriorating. That's on a spectrum of activity, and in fact there can be an extreme of deficiency where you are so sedentary that you are, again, deteriorating, deconditioning, degrading basically, or in excess, over exercising, overtraining is a term, but certainly that is real. So anyhow, regular exercise and daily frequent light therapeutic movement, sleep, stress management. This is a broad fundamental, including emotional and psychosocial as well as physical stressors, and factoring in standardly or more traditionally conceived stress, aka distress or net harmful stress, as well as net helpful stress or eustress tied to hormetic stressors, etc. Quick note concerning the stress management is, again, it's so broad. It's sometimes presented, for instance, that social bonding or social connection, etc., is some type of fundamental, and I would not necessarily argue with that. However, assuming that it is, in all probability, that is basically functioning through the stress resistance or stress management, stress response system, etc., that the stress system, rather than some type of novel social magic or something. Also, when it comes to these more supervenient features that are integral to the human experience and which in fact can affect our health, such as spiritual, or for secular context, I'm not sure what the term would be, but something that relates at such a core level to the evaluative frameworks and matrix, for lack of a better term to describe it, that you can be presented with, that we register in our experiencing of consciousness and of our life of existing. And again, there I would argue that more than any other, that is functioning through the stress system. Anyhow, again, there'll be much more detail to come for each of these. Biome savvy essential hygiene. Again, I'm not diving into details here, but just to give one example, consider scaling up your shower frequency or bath, whatever. Again, this is just an example, but just consider that you're doing it so often, your skin is extremely dried out and basically devoid of natural bodily oils and other elements. So the surface of our skin, which our skin is a primary immune barrier, will not only contain pathogenic bacteria or even fungi, there are biotically beneficial microbes and other beneficial compounds that can be present, in which you can, through excessive showering, like I say, for instance, particularly higher temperature showers, evacuate more of that than necessary, and in fact to a harmful, as far as your health level, by needlessly taking like 6 hot showers a day or something like that, for instance. It's probably a better example I could give. Another brief example I could mention has to do with certain types of mouthwash that you can use. Okay, now I've got a cleaner oral cavity. Well, there is a beneficial oral microbiome that you can negatively impact by over-sterilizing that local environment. Anyhow, these fundamentals are all supported by the science, and again, besides being essential for just baseline biological health and human function, could help support and sustain an array of individual and group efforts in what might otherwise be perceived as totally logically disconnected domains, areas, or activities. So many people pursuing various endeavors neglect this basic but vital area of study and practice. Shifting that to some degree can allow us to be more resilient and robust, not only in terms of our overall condition, but also in terms of our various other particular efforts in life, in our overall life itself, and indeed a better process that is represented by that familiar but fuzzy term, living. Again, this is simply a first revision to be updated as I continue to learn and resynthesize. It's something I've synthesized over time the last few years, particularly, and culminating more so in this last year. And also, by the way, is in a few different places on my notes, and there might be something I'm missing here that I actually had noted in one of those places. But regardless, I would argue, if you've got each of these down solid, this certainly consists of the bulk of what this channel is all about. Supporting and optimizing your minimum essential system requirements, and even further advancing your function, performance, quality of life, etc.